Well, it took him 20 years to write his story, but now it's available in your local bookstore.
Yeah, it's called The Last Salute, the true story of a West Point cadet's dream to honor his dying father. And joining us now is retired Army Major and now author Robert Paley. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gail and Melissa. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with your father, because we have an incredible picture of him that you saw earlier during the commercial break. A little bit about his backstory.
Yeah, he was a combat veteran of two wars, Korea and Vietnam, and by the time I was 12 years old, his Vietnam disease had come back, and that's when the story, The Last Salute, began, because my mother told me it was his dream to go to West Point, and I didn't really know what it was back then. And when she told me that was his dream, and then I realized that he may not survive the surgery that he went into the hospital for, at that age, I had a vision to go to West Point and make him my first salute. Wow. And so it was a race against time from that day forward. And the entire book talks about the struggles and everything I had to overcome to get there. And it was quite a journey.
Well, we know West Point, pretty prestigious. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. A huge honor to be there. My father loved West Point ever since he was a kid. He lived in New York City. His father and mother would take him up to parades all the time. And even when he got married and had his first child, there's a picture of him in 1956 at West Point. Family photo albums are full of it, so full of him at West Point, and I thought how amazing it would be someday to have him there again saluting me.
And look behind you, we have another picture. Tell us who that is.
Okay, and after the Korean War, he was wounded in action, went to Japan to recover, and he met and married my mother there. And he told her, I gave this up for you, because he was going to apply to West Point from the Korean War. And when you get married, you can't go to West Point. So every time they'd go to watch a parade, he'd say, I gave this up for you. And that's how she knew how much he loved her.
Oh, that is true love. I was just going to say that. So tell us a little bit about your book, The Last Salute.
It's a tribute. My father sacrificed so much for our country, as most veterans who serve do. Families are sacrifice just as much as the veterans, and sometimes even more, especially if they're disabled. And that's what I wanted to convey, and to honor those veterans' families, and to inspire other veterans who maybe have suffered through some PTS issues and things like that, to realize that there's hope and help out there, because a lot of times they don't know where to go to get that.
They suffer in silence a lot of the times. And I know you spent a little bit of time at MacDill Air Force Base.
That's right. I was here a couple years ago and learned to love this area, so I was very happy to be invited back to come and speak to you about my book today, and I appreciate that very much, because it's a message of hope. It's a message of having a dream more powerful than your nightmares, from childhood trauma to not thinking you're good enough to achieve something. So anyone who's ever had a kid, or anyone who's trying to achieve a big dream, this book will convince you that if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah, speaking of, it took 20 years. Yeah. Why did it take so long?
A lot of it's because of the nature of childhood molestation, death of loved ones. There was a lot of stuff I didn't understand was contributing to what would later be determined, documented as PTS, after I was in a combat zone in 2009. It all added up. And it took so long because talking about those things were traumatic and re-traumatizes you as you go through it. And finally, I went to a program called Save a Warrior in December of 2018. 60 days later, the book was published.
Wow.
That's incredible.
And really quickly, a book signing this afternoon.
Yes, I'll be at Oxford Exchange from 2 to 4 p.m.
Nice. What a beautiful spot that is in Tampa.
Yes,
Real gem.
So check
All right,
it out.
Ian Oliver, weather in the 8s.